Heavy metal, hard rock, rock and roll. Call it what you want, but there can be little doubt that this musical genre keeps on rolling along like a locomotive out of control. Many artists strive to be king of the hill, top dogs. In the 70s, it was Led Zeppelin and Kiss. In the 80s, Van Halen, Aerosmith, Bon Jovi and Guns N' Roses shared the crown. Yet, as we head towards the next century, one band and one alone can lay claim to the title in the 1990s. That band is Metallica. During the course of this audio documentary, we'll hear from the band themselves, their producer Bob Rock, and other key figures about life, love, touring, in fact, every aspect of how it was possible to become not only the best, but the biggest hard rock act in the world. It seems almost too good to be true that a band, many would have us believe playing the devil's music, should release their 6th album in the 6th month of 1996. Of course, this all becomes part of the magic and the mystique that surrounds this band. The new album is Load, but the press didn't seem to entirely understand it. Most of them only wanted to hear the Black Album too, but as James Hetfield and Jason Newsted explain, the band does not write for anyone else.
We write for ourselves, and that's it. And when you do write for yourself, and there's 100% honesty in the music, people really can see that. They can tell if you're writing songs for say, doing the Black Album over again.
Yeah.
Who would be happy with that?
Not us.
Maybe a small amount of people, but if we're not happy with it, it's going to just drag us down.
That's right, and you're going to be able to see through it. Period.
And, it's just the honesty factor shines so brightly through it all.
If you just can't go around doing that. You can't. Metallica's never been that way. I mean, it's obvious you listen to the record. He wasn't thinking about whatever.
No.
Somebody listened to their headphones in Auckland, 14-year-old somebody, and it has to be 400 miles an hour. It's obvious he's not thinking of that kind of thing. It's all over the place. Metallica, we retain like the metal part of it always. It always is heavy because of the mood that it creates. Even if it's just acoustic guitars and B-benders or whatever, it's still heavy for what it is, right? And so we're not content in just sitting in that one spot. We got to keep taking the big paces. That's what we expect from ourselves. That's what people expect from Metallica as well, to take those big paces for everybody in a way. It really is. James's thing that he kind of said through this recording of this record, or since we've been building it, really, dare to fail. You have to keep going. People say, what is the direction of this new album? Or that kind of thing. Direction for Metallica is forward. That's it.
Since day one, Metallica have always seemed to do things that way. Their motto seems to have been, do it loud, do it fast, but most of all, do it yourselves. The history of the band is one of both triumph and trauma. The band's story begins back in the spring of 1981, when Danish-born drummer Lars Ulrich was looking to start something different. Thankfully, future singer-guitarist James Hetfield was attempting to do the same thing, along with a pal of his, Ron McGovney, who James was living with at the time, and a guitarist friend called Lloyd Grant. Lars had managed to bluff his way onto a compilation album entitled Metal Massacre, with a self-penned tune called Hit the Lights. And after Lars and James had met, the band played their first ever gig at Radio City, way down on the bill in Anaheim, California. Within a short period of time, they recorded a couple of demos. The 4-track Power Metal, and the now legendary 7-track No Life Till Leather. The latter recording was to feature Lloyd's replacement, Dave Mustaine. Their first show with Dave was at the Old Waldorf in San Francisco on the 29th of November 1982. Interestingly, the support band that night, Exodus, featured a hot young guitarist called Kirk Hammett. During this period, the guys often went out to see other bands play LA's notorious Whiskey A Go-Go Club. And it was during one of these nights that they caught sight of a band called Trauma, who featured a bass guitar player called Cliff Burton. Burton was playing the bass as if it was a lead guitar, but told the band that they would have to relocate to San Francisco if they wanted him to join them. With Cliff in the band, they got a call from a guy called Johnny Z in New York, who said he was starting up his own label and wanted to sign the band. Excited by the offer, they all jumped into a van and drove 3,000 miles across America. They were to record their first album with a working title of Metal Up Your Ass at Music America Studio in Rochester in upstate New York. They did some warm-up shows along the East Coast, where Dave began to get a little out of control and started to upset the band's big family vibe, a feeling that is still pertinent to this day, as James and Jason confirm.
Band has been together for 14 years or something crazy
40.
like that.
And you've been with them 10.
Yeah, just growing up together. I mean, that it is family, no doubt. And some of us have strong family lives, some don't. So this is really family for quite a few of us. And to not respect your family is wrong. And we all really keep each other in line. We all keep tabs on each other, with the Metallica sarcasm we have. It really, it's funny, but it cuts and it works.
Somehow it's developed. Everybody shows respect for each other. Everybody gives each other space. You're not necessarily going to agree with what the guy says every time, or like all of his friends, or the decision she makes, or the things that he wears, or whatever it happens to be. But that's what you got to love him for that, man, because that's him, and that's what makes this thing tick. That's what makes, you can't just put any four people together and it goes, there's certain chemistry that just happens between folks, and that's why, he necessarily doesn't like all the music I listen to, vice versa, that kind of thing.
By this time, Dave had decided to leave. And on April the 1st, 1983, Exodus guitarist Kirk Hammett got a call inviting him to fly to New York to audition. At first he thought it was an April Fool's joke, but when the tickets arrived, he realized they were serious. Dave Mustaine's last gig with the band was at L'Amour's Club in Brooklyn, in New York, on the 9th of April, 1983. And even though it was evidently a great night, a week later, Kirk Hammett was not only in the band, but also on his way to upstate New York to help record the first album. Kill 'Em All was first released in America in July in 1983. At first the reaction was mixed, but at least everyone was talking about it. The band did club tours of the US and finally visited Europe for the first time in February 1984, where they undertook their first spate of British dates in March and April of that year. In between gigs, they took off to Sweet Silence Studios in Lars' home country of Denmark to record the band's second album, Ride the Lightning, which was to be released in July 1984. Critically, the album broke down the doors of the specialist rock press and won widespread acclaim, even going as far as to peak at number 100 on the Billboard charts. However, it does seem as if the whole world remembers this period with rose-tinted sunglasses. That is, except Kirk and Lars.
There certainly was a spirit back then that was a lot of fun, totally blinders on. We're just having a great time. We're just so committed to our music, and nothing's going to stop us taking to so many people as possible. I think the spirit of that has been maintained as much as it can be maintained when the numbers get to where they are. And I do think that deep within the nucleus of what we do, it's not really that different than it used to be. So it's 10, 12 years later, but I don't know if the attitude has changed that much within the band. It's more around the band that things have changed, if you understand what I mean. And I certainly won't, it's not necessarily more fun now than it was. It's just, we've always maximized, when you said that, every situation we've been in, whatever level it's been at, we've always tried to get the most out of it in a fun way, and with the music, and with hanging with people and the fans and the attitudes and stuff. So it's just a different level. Going down yesterday to the playback at Battersea Park, I think we signed every single autograph there for about an hour, met every kid, shook every hand, and I don't see it being that different than it used to. There's some more of them, but that's probably the only difference.
The big difference is that we probably have more space to ourselves as far as like traveling is concerned. We still have pretty much the same sort of attitude. It's us and the fans. It's just that we travel a little differently, and we have a little nicer hotel room. But there certainly is a tendency to romanticize those days when we were first starting out, and we were just like full on, just hungry musicians who were just bent on shoving our music down everyone's throats. We're still like that. We're still doing that, obviously, right now. This press tour is just another faction of that. But it hasn't really changed that much. Just things around us have changed a bit.
Metallica and Johnny Z finally parted ways, and the band took on a new management, Q Prime, and signed a new record deal with Elektra. Elektra immediately repackaged and reissued Ride with the Lightning, while the band stayed on the road promoting the album as hard as they could. They even got to play behind the Iron Curtain. As Jason explained, this was quite a highlight.
For us being Americans, going to Poland is going to be very, very special because of the current state of affairs between our two nations, the Soviet bloc countries in general and America, it's like a sensitive subject. So, we don't know what to expect. I know that we've done real well as far as ticket sales are concerned.
Yeah.
Tell them.
Yeah, we did 2,700-seat shows in 3 hours.
Sold out.
Yeah. And it's fortunes for tickets over there
for
those people.
Yeah. For an album, it takes like 2 or 3 weeks' wages just to buy an album.
How did they get the albums over there?
I'm not sure exactly.
All I've ever heard was like the black market stuff. I don't know if that's the only way.
Or perhaps, there's companies importing.
Hard to say, man, because I just can't see. I think maybe in the bigger cities, Warsaw or something, have places where they're available through like a distributor or something. But it's kind of hard to.
I know it's probably it's definitely not your side of things, but how would a band be paid for sort of playing Soviet bloc countries?
We're getting as soon as we get in there.
Getting vodka and jam.
No, as soon as we get in there, they give us their money. They give us like whatever. How many ever 160 billion of their quatroons or whatever it is, right?
Worth bugger all.
Yeah, because our money is no good there. Our money is no good there. It's only good on the black market. It's like they give us as soon as we get in. See, the government flies us in and everything, right?
Yeah.
It's a totally government controlled everything.
Yeah, hotels, everything.
Right.
Yeah.
As soon as we get in, they give us their money to spend if we want to spend it, and that's it. I'm not sure about what the fine, how much we get paid at the shows or what happens
because
there.
they won't let people take money out of the country.
Right.
Which is...
I don't know if it's some kind of I'm not sure exactly what they have worked out for the wages.
I can tell once I get drunk.
Wait, can you read these words, man?
Once I get drunk and look at those words, I'm gonna
that word right there.
Looking at that's gonna make my head swim.
That is probably very serious, isn't it? Trying to read that shit.
Yeah, and they don't have beer over there. All they have is like hard shit.
Yeah,
like
they have
vodka.
really serious vodka. Over
Yeah,
there.
and they have like they have like clear vodka and then dark vodka.
Yeah.
Drinking apart, this was a trek that was to end with the band's first appearance at the legendary Monsters of Rock festival in Donington, England, during August 1985. Squeezed between Rat and Bon Jovi in the lineup, Hetfield told the 70,000-strong crowd, "If you came here to see spandex, eye makeup and the words 'Oh baby' in every song, this ain't the band." From September to December that year, they returned to the Sweet Silence Studios once again to record Master of Puppets, which was to be released in March 1986. The album flew out of record stores and powered its way into the US Top 30. Meanwhile, the first 2 albums started to sell again, which would lead to the band being offered a 5-month summer tour as support to Ozzy Osbourne. It was to be their last ever as a support act. As the tour wound down, though, the band would be struck by tragedy. In September 1986, they had taken a break from the Ozzy tour to do some headlining European dates. And sometime approaching dawn, on Saturday the 27th, Metallica's tour bus was to lose control on some black ice, swerving violently and careering wildly down the road. It came to a halt 60 feet later, on its side and in a ditch. The band and crew scrambled free, but it became apparent that Cliff Burton was still trapped inside. Kirk Hammett will never forget that night.
I've never told anyone this, by the way, but our manager said, "Well, why don't we just draw cards?" We said, "Sure." So we shuffled the cards, said highest card gets first choice of bunks. So, I reach for a card and I pick 2 of hearts. Cliff reaches for a card, he gets ace of spades. James gets a card, Lars gets a card. So Cliff has first choice of bunks. So he says, "I want your bunk, Kirk." I go, fine, So he gets my bunk. I end up with a bunk in the front of the bus, which was like not as good. And that night the accident happened, and it was a horrible thing because Cliff was in my former bunk. What happened that night was that the driver supposedly hit a patch of ice, and the bus skidded. It shattered the windows, and Cliff got thrown out of the bus, and the bus landed on top of him. And when it actually happened, I got thrown out of my bunk, and knocked unconscious for like 3 or 4 seconds. And when I came to, I heard everyone screaming, but I didn't hear Cliff. And I instantly knew something was wrong because I didn't hear him. And I got out of the top of the bus because there's an emergency hatch at the very top of the bus. And I turned around and there was Cliff. And I just said, "Oh my God." And I walked away and I was in absolute shock. And I was delirious. I was in shock. I was hysterical. Everyone was screaming and crying.
In October 1986, the band courageously decided that life must go on without Cliff, and they eventually drafted in replacement Jason Newsted, who was a former bassist with Flotsam and Jetsam. We'll let Kirk explain why.
Right after the accident happened, we individually decided that the best way to get rid of all our frustrations, because we were very traumatized and we felt a lot of emotional distraught over the situation. We thought that the best way to get rid of our frustrations
Was that one mine?
would be to hit the road, and get all the anxiety and frustrations out on stage, where they should go, They should go toward a positive thing like that. The worst thing we could do is just like sit in our room and sulk over the matter and wallow in
You
our
just think
pity.
lower and lower, and you just don't want to go and do it again. If you get to a stage where it feels so bad that you're not even sure you want to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And the more you think about it, the deeper you sink. So we each thought individually we have to keep on going. We have to work, because it wouldn't be fair to Cliff to just stop.
Yeah.
Also, if Cliff were alive for some some reason or another, and he couldn't play bass, he wouldn't tell us to stop. He would want us to go on. I don't know, that's the way he would have felt. He would have wanted us to go on.
Yeah.
So we had a band meeting, and that was the overwhelming decision to go on. So we decided after the last rites that we should just sit down and start auditioning bass players.
Yeah.
And this is 2 weeks into 2 weeks after the accident, we started auditioning bass players, and we started setting everything up, and we started auditioning bass players. We auditioned up to 8 bass players a day.
Yeah.
And it was really nerve-wracking. And then
How many did you audition?
overall, I don't know, 30, 40, I don't
50,
know.
30, 40, 50.
30, 40, 50, I can't remember. A lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least 40. At least 40, I'm sure of that. But we had names thrown about, and we asked people in the industry, record company people, friends, who had connections and stuff. And a name that kept on popping up was Jason Newsted, this guy right here.
Yeah.
And so it came time to audition him. So we took the time out to take our time with him, because a lot of the people, you just walk into the room, you can tell, no way, this guy is gonna be in Metallica.
Yeah.
Guy come in, he's stoned off his ass, was walking into Mike's tents and stuff. I mean, we had a lot of those. Okay, there's a lot of people there. I guess they start the song, and you can just tell that their bass style wasn't the type of style right off the bat.
A lot of it's going to have to depend on personality.
Yeah, and personality too. You got a lot of people walking in there with this huge air of supremacy. And that's just not it. So anyway, we took our time with him, because he had the most recommendations out of everyone, and he came to the audition knowing about 9 songs, and you only had to know 1 song, which was Master of Puppets, but he knew 9, which was an obvious advantage.
Yeah.
And so we played with him, and he sounded good, played fine, seemed like an okay character, even though he was sticking Flotsam and Jetsam stickers all over everything, like my back, on my guitar case, on all the equipment cases. But anyway, that's beside the point. How's it going, man?
Busy and alive.
Yeah, that's a cool shirt. I'll talk to you in a bit. Yeah. But anyway, at the end of the day, we decided there's 3 people, out of the 40 or so people we audition. That was Jason and two other people. So we decided that the thing to do would be to, go out to eat with the person, afterwards have a few drinks, or maybe a lot of drinks, depending on our hotel.
Drinks. Keep pace with you.
Yeah, exactly. If they could keep up with us or drink us under the table. But we took one guy out, he was pretty cool, but something not right. Then we took Jason out, and everything fell into place.
Yeah.
So we're in this place called Tommy's Joint.
2 a.m.
Yeah, 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, still drinking. Yeah, after we had a dinner, we were like drinking whatever we were drinking, and then all of a sudden everyone had to go to the bathroom except Jason. So we went into the bathroom and had a band meeting on the urinal, and decided, well, what do you think? I go, yeah, he's cool. James says, yeah, he's cool. So we went out there and asked him if he wanted to join the band. And he said no, so we had to
I did. I go,
we had to twist his arm.
No Heineken? Wait.
We had to twist his arm.
In August 1987 came his first chance to prove himself with the release of the Days Revisited EP, released to tie in with the band playing the postponed pan-European Monsters of Rock show after Cliff's untimely death. This also included the second appearance on the bill at Donington, followed by a lengthy stint in the one-on-one studios in North Hollywood, Los Angeles, to record And Justice for All. They then set out on a summer US version of Monsters, the outdoor shows that were headlined by Van Halen. And Justice was released in September 1988, and sure enough, it leapt into the top 10 in both the USA and Europe. The album contained the track One, a track that was to become the band's first ever commercial video clip. Influenced by Dalton Trumbo's pulp classic, Johnny Get a Gun, it got heavy MTV rotation, and although over 7 minutes long, the song was getting played on every radio station across America. The 18 months of touring that followed confirmed Metallica as the fastest rising rock act in America. They finished 1989 by being nominated for a Grammy for And Justice for All, and the band became the first metal act to play at the awards. But in a notorious incident, the band amazingly lost out to Jethro Tull. Losing out to Tull, however, seemed to spurn the band on, with Lars stating that he wanted the band to be bigger than anything. In 1989, this seemed like wishful thinking, but by the mid-1990s, Ulrich's words would prove to be prophetic. Following a 9-month break, they then started work on a series of shorter songs for their fifth album, simply entitled Metallica, which has also become known as the Black Album because of its Spinal Tap-esque No More Black sleeve. The album would see the band hook up with Canadian Bob Rock, whose producer credits included Bon Jovi, The Cult, and the biggest and best-sounding rock record of the time, Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood. Bob Rock was an obvious choice. He was a musician living in Vancouver and seemed like the man able to make a unique contribution that could take the band to new heights. We'll let him explain.
What I try and do, or what I try and be as a producer to other artists, is I try and be that extra member of the band that's there to give the opinion and to help them record their album. And the only thing is that doing my album, it's just I have this picture-perfect, clear view of exactly what I want and how to get it. I don't know anything else. This is kind of what I know. What I do is that I write songs and I go into a studio, whether with myself or with a band, and I do what I do. I guess other people look at me and go like, well, that's crazy. I mean, you can work with big bands all the rest of your life, but first and foremost, I'm a musician. I have a technical side, being an engineer and a mixing engineer for so many years and stuff, but also I'm equally as much a musician. And when you're a musician like myself, you're tormented by music, and I'm totally obsessed with music. And aside from my wife and my kids, it's the biggest thing in my life. The one thing, and whether it's a positive or negative thing, is that I think what you'll find on this album is that there's some influences. We do some different things that normal hard rock bands wouldn't do, and that comes out of the Paolas and Rock and Hide. That's one thing that Paul and I always did, is we've got a lot of influences and we tend to dabble in them all, and I know that sometimes that's not good for an artist's career, but we tend to do that, and on this album I still do it. There is a thread to all the stuff that I do musically. I'd say that on every album that I've done as an artist, there's always a commercial side and a moody side, and I would say that the moody side is probably really the way I am as a person. You see, I'm a lover of pop music, and I still remember, I can picture it in my head perfectly. The first time I heard Honky Tonk Woman, they said it was the new Stone single. It was Honky Tonk Woman, and I remember that cowbell and the whole sound and everything. And that's what I love more than anything, is just songs combined with sound to make a record. I just love records. I love stuff coming over the radio. I'm influenced by everything. The bands of the 70s, Led Zeppelin and the Stones, but right up to the bands of the 90s like Nirvana, Metallica, and all the people that I've worked with, right up to our conversation today, this morning, about artwork. You know, I'm influenced by everything, and it all comes out in the music.
The band got ready to unleash their new album in September of 1991. A month prior to this, though, they made their third appearance at Donington in the UK, moving up to the special guest slot and previewed material from the new album for the first time. They also held 2 pre-release listening parties for the album, one at Madison Square Gardens in New York and one at the Hammersmith Odeon in London, England. When the record came out, it shot to number 1 in America and topped the charts in 14 other countries worldwide. The first single from the album was Enter Sandman, a rock song that not only sounded great on the radio, but also sounded so right when played in a rock club. A record that you could bang your head to, and the girls got to dance to. UK Club Supremo, Andy Copping, of AC Promotions, was there.
Well, just harking back to I would say, probably the springtime of 1991, I was down at Phonogram Records, and one of their marketing girls called me into her office and said that she'd got a track off the new Metallica album, which they were hoping to release as the first single from the forthcoming Black album. I remember sitting in the office, cranking up the old hi-fi, and just hearing this most amazing, incredible riff coming from the speakers. We sat in total silence while we heard the song. I have to say, when the record finished, the old feeling of the hairs on the back of the neck and the eyes filling up was well to the fore after hearing that track. And relatively, I guess I was quite speechless at hearing it. I'd heard it, I think, about a month prior to its actual release, and being totally blown away. And it was interesting to note that after that period, that through certainly all the clubs that I was involved at the time, and other clubs around the UK that I used to talk to, that Enter Sandman was without doubt the biggest dance floor filler that they'd experienced in a long, long, long time. And not only was it a dance floor filler from one certain part of the audience, but everybody was into it. I remember the girl that I was seeing at the time who absolutely would not have given Metallica the time of day. You know, they're a thrash band, they're too fast, they're too loud, and all those other adjectives that were thrown at Metallica at that time. I mean, even she was into it. I mean, girls that were effectively into sort of the tail end of glam with bands like Warrant and Poison and so on and so forth, White Line, etc. But at the time were, I guess, in their purple period, the people that were into those sort of bands were as well blown away by this track. I remember certainly at Rock City in Nottingham that we would have to play the track at least twice a night, and quite regularly would play it 3, maybe 4 times, which is unheard of in clubland. You normally play one track by one band once, but the demand was just so great. And every time you put the song on, the minute that intro started, a cheer would go up. And I remember that going on. I mean, even now, if you play the track, here we are, right in 1997, if you put the track on now, a cheer will go up, your dance floor will be packed. An absolute classic. And being involved with other clubs, as well as rock clubs, I was involved with student nights and with alternative clubs as well, that Enter Sandman became the biggest requested track in those clubs as well. So not only had they transcended all the rock markets, but they'd also started to encroach into, student and the alternative market as well, which, well, what can you say? There's not many bands that have been able to do that. Incredible, really.
The Metallica album spawned no fewer than 5 singles, each supported by a promo video between 1991 and 93. They were all huge worldwide hits. The band toured everywhere and was now without doubt becoming the biggest rock act in the world. They never stopped playing gigs. They never stopped appearing on MTV. In fact, it seemed like every time you turned on the radio, they would be on. After their final show at the Milton Keynes Bowl, England, in 1993, which was christened the Nowhere Left to Roam tour, they vanished from the world stage to let the dust settle. At the end of 93, the group released the boxed Metallica set, Live Shit, Binge and Purge, a one-off numbered CD plus video live box set. They then took some well-earned time off to get their lives together, before once again hooking up with Bob Rock to start recording the next album. And some, it must be said, were keen to ask why. Lars Ulrich explains.
Well, if you asked me that question the day we finished the Black album, I would have told you we would never work with him again. If you had asked him that question, he would tell you he would never work with us again. The Black album was a tough record to make. A lot of stress, a lot of arguing, a lot of difference of opinions and stuff like that. I think also just Bob, from where he was coming from, where we were coming from, it was a pretty ugly record to make. The main thing that happened between the Black album and our new record is that we a few of us developed some pretty close friendships with him. We got a chance to hang out away from the studio, spend some time together, not working on a record, and a few of us got really tight with him. I think I developed a really close friendship with him in the last couple of years. When it was time to sit down and figure out what to do with this record, it was pretty automatic, but it wasn't automatic 4 or 5 years ago when the last album was done. So he was back again. This record, of the 6 records we've done, was definitely the easiest record to make, the least stressed out record we've made. We definitely also, bought some time on this one in the studio. We worked one notch lesser in terms of the stress level. This is the first record we've ever made at home in San Francisco, and we kind of told ourselves that we would rather the record take 2-3 months longer and we don't kill ourselves or each other doing it. So this has definitely been the least difficult record for us. It was difficult and so on, but it was the least difficult and the least stressed out record we've made. And I think the situation with Bob now is one, I look at Bob more in the studio as like a friend that you bounce ideas, not like sort of a producer-artist relationship, but more like we have a good friend of ours in the studio who we throw ideas at, who throws ideas at us, who helps us get what we want. When we sit down and make a Metallica record, there isn't a lot of criteria because we're so instinctive. But we did tell Bob that we really thought we wanted to once again try and be looser than we'd been before, to bring a more of a band thing to the forefront, and to try and get more of how we play live, more of a live thing down on the record. Those were the only major instructions given to him, and off we went.
With the exception of their surprise last-minute headlining appearance at 1995's Donington, dubbed the Escape from the Studio show, where Metallica had agreed to save the day when the promoters could not find a suitable headlining act, the band decided to keep a low profile. It had, after all, been almost 5 years since the last album. Lars and Kirk.
We were on the road for bordering on 3 years. We took a year off to clear our heads, and we spent pretty much a year getting this record together. So there's your 5 years. Obviously, that time was not one of inactivity. It was one of probably the hardest work that we've ever done. The tour was the longest tour we've been on, probably the longest tour anybody's been stupid enough to go on. And it was, but you know what? We had a record that could carry that kind of tour, and it was the right thing to do, and it was the right time to do it. We got a chance to play to a lot of places that we might never go back to. A lot of countries opened up to us. And we came back to places like the UK and Europe and stuff like that 3 times on the run. So it was a great thing. After that, we really were in need of some serious time off for the first time in our career. We really needed to get away from Metallica for a while. And then we got back to Metallica, and me and James wrote about 30 songs, and we went in the studio and recorded 30 songs. So we actually didn't record one album while we were away. We actually basically recorded 2 albums, and we have the rest of these songs sitting, waiting to be used, hopefully on a second record that we hope to share with all you guys in about 18 months to maybe 24 months. So 5 years in terms of calendar years, but basically just tons of work, and I think it's gone really quick actually. So there you go.
Yeah, it seems like just a flash. I mean, I can remember doing the same sort of thing back in 1991. I mean, it's gone by really, really quickly. The whole 5 years, because I mean, it was not like we were just like sitting around, by the pool. I mean, we worked for those 5 years.
The work seemed to be paying off when the band told the world that they had recorded 29 songs in total. But instead of releasing a double album, they would now unleash Load, and then in 18 to 24 months' time issue a second album comprising of offcuts from the Load sessions, plus additional new material, speculatively entitled Reload or Unload. Released in June 1996, the new album once again became a major chart topper around the world for the band. The title of the album holds no mysteries, however. Lars and Kirk.
We really wanted something that was vague. We wanted something that was not, pardon the pun here, a loaded title, something that had a lot of weight to it, something that was sort of, we've been there with the concept records, we've been there with the deep, meaningful, bordering on political statements and this type of stuff. And in the spirit of the Black Album or the Untitled Album or the Metallica Album, whatever you call it, we really wanted to continue that. I think especially James felt that as the lyrics were getting more and more personal, he felt that he was less and less interested in tying the songs together, lyrically, tying the songs together in a subjective, subject-wise. And I think we wanted to just try and find a title that meant nothing or could mean anything you wanted it to mean. I think we've got about 6 or 7 different options for what the title actually could mean, bordering from the completely stupid to the more serious to, whatever it says on your DAT player there. Well, I mean, it's...
Just wait till the album cover comes out. They'll open up a whole nother can of beans right there as far as the title's concerned. It has a nice ring to it, too, Load, I think.
Load itself was less of a surprise following the same path as its predecessor. The bombastic opener Ain't My Bitch to the Sandman sounding King Nothing. The first single from the album was Until It Sleeps, a song that James seems to have a soft spot for.
That song is, I think, extra special, at least to me, and I'm pretty sure the other 3 and Bob, because it was something that I think Bob was a little concerned that we don't really jam and create things like all 4 of us. Mm-hmm. Like Lars and I sit and we construct the songs, But this was something, we were just loosening up before some drum tracks or something, and we just started goofing with something, and he, whispered, "Hey, push record, man," and got some stuff on tape. And within a couple days, we worked at it, kind of twisted things around, and it came out to be that song. Yeah, we built it, and it was so cool. It's like, hey, we can do it, guys.
What a good song.
The Load Tour kicked off with a 2-month jaunt headlining the Lollapalooza across America, which seems to suggest that they were now the alternative to what was going on. They also decided to play with electronica when the band was asked to contribute to the soundtrack of a new film called Spawn. Kirk added some guitar to a dance track called Satan by a band called Orbital. Meanwhile, a guy they called DJ Spooky was let loose to do a dance beat version of For Whom the Bells Toll, even going as far as to retitle it The Irony of It All. It met with much critical acclaim. However, older fans once again wondered what was going on, while the newer ones were saying about time. They then took off to Europe and the rest of the world on a headline tour, the halfway point of that tour being this summer's festival in Reading, in England, where the band will play a headline show that will close Chapter 1 of the Load period. After that, well, the only thing we can be sure of is that the boys will, once again, be off on the road somewhere. Because after all, it's on stage that the band feels most at home. The final word belongs to James and Jason.
But it's the life we choose, and it's one of the extremes of it all. You know, you're at home for 6 months, relaxing and going insane there, and then you're on the road. You know, the exact opposite. Just completely mental every night. Just letting all this energy pour out of you, and that's probably the most difficult, coming down off of the tour or getting geared up for the tour. Right. Both of those things. But once you're out there and the big wheel is rolling, just crushing all over the place, there's no better feeling really when you're on, and people can see it and they feel it. And the Black Album kept us out for 2 years, and there's so many places that opened up for us, a lot of the Pacific Rim, and then some stuff, even further into Europe, the Eastern Bloc, and even further south there, Greece and Turkey and things like that. We want to play everywhere. Just let us in.
That's right.
Dare you,
That's always been our quest, right? It continues to be. We want to play to as many people as we possibly can. We've made a lot of good decisions and good moves as far as touring or certain, say Grammys of '88, playing and bringing this ugly music out in front of a bunch of people that never knew that it even existed, and that kind of thing, right? Different decisions like that are playing on different tours, say Guns N' Roses or whatever, and reassuring ourselves that we're doing the right thing. Keep making those kind of decisions and keep pressing on. We continue to grow. People grow with us, that kind of thing. That's the whole idea behind it.